Some of you grew up with an antenna on your roof. You know exactly what I mean. You know the way the picture would go fuzzy right at the wrong moment. You know the feeling of sitting on someone else's floor, in someone else's house, crowded next to people you barely knew, because there was one television in the neighborhood and Friday night was English film night on the Doordarshan. Tonight's story begins on one of those nights. A boy who didn't get to finish the film, a question that wouldn't let him sleep, and a book he found 15 years later that made him realize someone else already knew. They just call it something different.
My name is Bari. I grew up in Mokiwat. I want to start there because where you grow up shapes what frightens you, and what frightens you shapes what you spend your life looking for. I have been looking for the same thing for 15 years. It started on a Friday night, in a neighbor's house, on a lane where one family had a television and the rest of us were grateful for it. The man's name was Babuk. He wasn't rich. He wasn't important. But he had worked in Shillong for many years before coming back to Mokirwat, and he returned with a television set and an antenna on the roof. And in those years, in that town, that made him the center of something. Every Friday night, sometimes Saturday, depending on Doordarshan's mood, the lane came to his house. No invitation needed. You finished your dinner and you walked over. You sat where there was space, on the wooden bench along the wall, on the floor, on a stool someone dragged in from the kitchen. Babok's wife would pass through once with tea and then disappear, and the room would go quiet, and whatever Doordarshan had decided to show that night would fill the screen. I was 11. I went every week. I was also very good at not being sent home. The trick was the back wall. Kongrit Babok's wife would do her sweep sometime around 10:30. She had a look. Efficient. Not unkind, but final. You found the angle her eyes moved past when she scanned the room, and you kept very still, and you looked like you had always been supposed to be there. It worked most of the time. The night I am telling you about it worked too well, and I wished afterward that it hadn't. The antenna on Babok's roof was a neighborhood project. Every week there was the ritual, someone going outside in the dark with a hand on the pole, angling it by small degrees, while someone else leaned from the window and called out better, "No, go back. There, stop." Rain made things worse. A truck passing on the main road could knock the signal loose for half a minute. We would all sit in silence watching the snow on the screen, waiting for the picture to find itself again. I loved all of it. I loved the crowding. I loved the smell of someone else's dinner still in the air. I loved that once the film started, the adults forgot I was there. That was the rule. Conway would come back at some point in the night and send the children home. The mothers on the lane trusted this arrangement completely. They sent us over knowing she would return us at a reasonable hour. I had learned over 3 years how to not be returned at a reasonable hour. The night everything changed was a Friday in November. The film came on after the news. I couldn't read the title clearly. The reception was doing something strange, the picture flickering at the edges. One of the uncles went outside to adjust the antenna. The picture steadied. What came on the screen was in black and white. Old black and white, not like old photographs. Something heavier than that. Like the shadows in the frame had weight. Like the light cost something. There was a man, pale, very tall, moving through darkness with fingers like stripped branches and eyes that held nothing. No fear, no hunger you could name, just patience. The patience of something that has been waiting for a very long time and is not surprised that you have finally arrived. The room was quieter than usual that night. Nobody made jokes. Nobody complained about the reception. We just watched this creature move through a dark building, onto a ship, into a town, and people dying everywhere it went, and nobody understanding why. I didn't know the name of the film. I still don't see it. I didn't know the word for what the creature was. I had heard it somewhere in a classroom, maybe, or from a cousin who had been to a bigger city, but it meant nothing to me then. It had no texture, no temperature. What was on that screen had both, and I had seen something like it before. Not on a screen, in my grandmother's words. 3 years before that night, my grandmother told me something while she was husking areca nut outside our house. She didn't look at me when she said it. She only ever looked away when the thing she was saying was real. There is a snake, she said. Not a snake you find in the field or near the water. A snake that lives inside a family. It drinks, and in return the family receives money, land, children who don't die young, but it must be fed, always fed, and you don't choose to keep it, you inherit it, like a name, like a debt. She didn't say the name of the thing. I already knew what she was describing. You grow up in the Khasi Hills, you know. You hear it sideways, in pieces, never directly, but you know the shape of it. Walking home from Babok's house that November night, alone on a dark lane I had walked 10,000 times, the banana trees, the wood smoke, someone's fence, the sound of the hills settling into cold, I felt something connect, not in my head, in my chest. The way a key turns in a lock you didn't know was there. I lay on my mat that night and I made a list. That is what I did then, when something frightened me and I had nobody to tell. I made the fear into something with edges, something I could look at from the outside. Both live inside a family, not near it. Inside it, both feed on the ones closest to them. Both give something in return, wealth, protection, fortune that looks like luck from the outside. Both cannot be removed. Once a family has one, it stays. Both required someone at the beginning to say yes. That last one was where I stopped, because I understood something then that I had no business understanding at 11 years old on a mat in Mokirwat. Someone chose this. At the beginning of every story like this, the one on the screen, the one my grandmother described, the one whispered about in half sentences across every household in the Khasi Hills, someone looked at the thing and said, yes, feed from us, take what you need, but make us fortunate. Someone always says yes. I didn't sleep, and I never found out how the film ended. Congrate found me at the back wall. She always found me eventually. Hand on the shoulder, a look that needed no translation, and I was outside on the lane before I had time to argue. I never went back to ask Barbok what happened at the end of the film. Some part of me still doesn't want to know. I was not a scholar. I had no library. I had 3 shelves of books in a school that thought curiosity was acceptable within certain limits. And I had the stubbornness of a child who has felt something true and cannot let it go. It took me years to find what I was looking for. A book, written by one man more than a century ago. A man who had traveled or read the accounts of those who had, and gathered from many cultures, Eastern Europe, the British Isles, places I had never heard of then, every version of this creature, every name, every arrangement, every contract between a family and something that fed on them. He put it into a story. He gave the creature a shape, a name, and the whole world recognized it, because the whole world already knew it. They had just been calling it something else. What stopped me, what has not let me go since, was this. The arrangement he described was the same. Not similar, the same. The feeding from within the family, the wealth that follows, the fortune that cannot be explained, the thing that cannot be removed once it has entered a bloodline. The fact that somewhere at the beginning a person chose it. He was writing about Romania, about Eastern Europe, about places 10,000 miles from the Khasi Hills, and he was describing something my grandmother told me about while husking areca nuts outside our house in Mokirwat. How did he know? That is the question I cannot stop asking. How did a man sitting in a city far from here, more than a century ago, know about something that lives in these hills? Did he find it somewhere else first? Did it travel? Is it the same thing, wearing different faces in different lands? Or is it something older than any of these stories, something that was always everywhere, waiting to be found by whoever was looking? I don't have the answer, but I know where I have to go to find it. I am going to travel, not for tourism, not for pleasure. I am going to the places where this thing has other names, other faces, other arrangements, other families who call themselves lucky and could not explain why. I want to find the thread that connects all of them. I want to find out if it is one thing or many things. I want to find out if the author of that book found what I think he found and whether what he found is still out there, still waiting, still making arrangements with families who need something badly enough to say yes. I don't know what I'm going to find. I'm not sure I meant to, but I know this. The night I sat on bar box floor and watched something pale move across a flickering screen and felt my grandmother's words lock into place in my chest. That was not a coincidence. And I have stopped believing in coincidences. I'm Bari. This is where I begin.
That's Bari. And this is only the beginning of what he found. Next time, a different place, a different creature, a different name, but the same hunger underneath, the same arrangement, the same question. Barry has been asking since he was 11 years old on a floor of Margaret. Who said yes first and why? I'm your little keeper. Something just started, and none of us, not even me, know where it ends.